Before we talk about The Garnett Girls,
Yeah.
which is a great novel, really good, you should all read it, absolutely. You are a publicist, PR, and really what I wanted to talk about first of all was your sort of publicist life and how you've enjoyed maybe being on the other side of things for a change.
Yes, well, I mean, I'm still a publicist.
Yes.
I'm still Maggie O'Farrell's publicist. I've been Maggie O'Farrell's book publicist for, I suppose it's about 14 years. And obviously that's been really exciting. I'm sure there are lots of you who've read Maggie O'Farrell since Hamnet, and, you know, everything's taken off with stage adaptations and films, and so it's been really exciting. But I've known her from the beginning. I suddenly realised that we were moving she had an entourage now. Oh. And I said, yeah, she's gone into the big time film people and agents, yeah. So I had this great job in publishing at Headline, running the press office, running a big team. But it's not the kind of job that leaves a lot of time for writing. But it was, and it still is, in many ways, my dream job, because I get to go out and tell people about great books and get people to buy great books. And I call it book pushing, a sort of megaphone about books. So yes, in many ways, people have said, well, why is it taking you so long? Which I think is a bit rude.
Why has it taken you so long?
Thank you.
It was too good to resist, I'm afraid, sorry.
I think that I was one of those children that was always scribbling in notebooks, and then I found actually, you know, when your parents start giving you back your stuff in boxes. My father gave me a box and it had lots of terribly bad poems, I mean so bad, and sort of angsty journals and a lot of stuff that I was obviously doing in my 20s. And I think I had a moment when I was in my 30s of, I'll write a girl about London novel. And then I just thought, actually, I don't have anything to add to that genre. And I was busy. And I had the children quite late. I had them at 38, 39. So they're still quite young, 12, 13. And I was busy with my job. And I think actually in many ways, if I can be honest, publishing put me off. Because when you work in publishing, you realise how many books are published. How many books are competing for that one tiny fiction review in a magazine or in the Times, and it just seems that authors have to work so hard to be seen and to be heard. And I think it's really hard for a lot of authors. I mean, I happen to really enjoy this part of it and be a happy extrovert, but I've worked with lots of authors who, you know, are introverts and think it's going to be they're going to be at a desk, and then someone like me comes along and goes, oh, you've got to go on social media and you've got to do your post on Instagram and you've got to go to this festival, and they're like, what? So I think it can be hard. But yes, I think the reason I left it so late was combination of a great job, really busy, no time, and being slightly wary, and knowing that when I did it, it would have to be good, because people would be watching.
Yes, it would almost be expected of you.
Yeah, and so I had that pressure. But also had massive advantages. Massive advantages, because when it was written, I knew who the agents were that I'd quite like to work with. I knew who the publishers were. So I had those advantages, but it did come with that pressure of knowing that if I failed, I would fail quite spectacularly. And this really came home to me at my launch party. At the launch party, I actually heard someone say, "Oh God, thank God it's good." Oh God. And actually, told that story to Patrick Gale, and Patrick Gale, yeah, God, I was terrified. I was really scared. I was like, thanks, Patrick. He was one of the first readers that gave me a nice quote, which meant the absolute world.
I'm sure.
And he's been so supportive, even coming from Cornwall to the island to interview me for my publication events. He's been really generous friend and a generous author. But yes, that was why. And then lockdown came. And I think, like a lot of people, our lives changed. I wasn't travelling around the country going to literary festivals. I wasn't going in and out of the BBC with authors. I have never been very good at going home early from a party. And anyone who reads the Garnett Girls could probably assume that. And there are a lot of parties in the Garnett Girls. But I've never, and so I was often having late nights. And that all went in lockdown suddenly. And I became a person, for the first time in my life, probably I think maybe the only time in my life, an early riser. And I was doing what a lot of mums were doing up and down the country, is I was doing online school. Whoever wants to do that again? That was hard.
I was glad I actually missed that particular one.
That was really tough. So I started getting up before the day began and writing at 5:30, trying not to wake up the house and trying to, and it became something I really looked forward to. And I suddenly realised for the first time, as a publicist, you're doing stuff for authors to promote others. And I think it felt to me like it was a bit of a slice of the day before the day began that was just for me. And this story, the Garnetts, really pulled me into it. And I found that I loved it. And if I didn't spend that hour before the day started, I really missed it. And
how long did it actually take you to write it, if you were doing it sort of an hour at a time, would you say?
It went really fast, but the idea had been mulling for a long time. I knew I wanted to write the kind of book I love to read, which is a character-driven novel. And really the plot lies in the characters. And I'd always wanted to write about mothers and daughters, because I think it's the most fascinating relationship and can be so tricky to navigate, and also so uniquely special as well, and also sisters. So I had this idea formulating about a family, and we were here, James, my partner, and I own a houseboat in Bembridge Harbour called Sturdy. And we bought her, I suppose, about 11 years ago. We wanted somewhere to come with the kids when they were little, in the beaches. And so we've got a lot of very happy childhood memories here on the island. And we often walk down from Seaview through lovely Seagrove over to Priory. And there was a family coming out of one of those stunning houses on, those are the dream houses right on the beach, right with the sand. And we saw a family, and they were going off sailing together, and they were all talking over each other and bantering. And I thought to myself, because I grew up in London, I thought to myself, what would it be like to grow up in such a close community? And we all know that, the Isle of Wight has these close pockets of community where everyone knows you. Everyone knows your name. You see people in the street. Oh, hi, see you later. And I didn't have that when I was growing up. And I thought about how, in many situations, it would be amazing. So if you, like Margot, you've gone through you've lost your husband and you're heartbroken, a community can pull together and help you. But if you're wild child Sasha, the youngest daughter, the black sheep of the family, and you don't want everyone to know your history and what happened to your father and all the secrets of your family, it must be awful and claustrophobic and difficult and stressful, and you want to get away. And a lot of the Garnett Girls is about the magic of what they have as a family in the community on the island, but it's also about trying to get away from home, but also always being pulled back, that feeling being pulled back home, and trying to really, the girls have got to make peace with their home and what it means and their relationship with their mother. But that's when the idea came. So sat at home in lockdown, missing the island, no one could go anywhere, we couldn't go, and I was really missing it. And I think people have been nice enough to say that some of that longing you feel it in the book.
Absolutely.
And so once that all came together, off I went. And from that point on, not to sound, too smug, because it's hard, it can be hard, it flowed, it came. And the characters sort of, once I had the beginning of them, they went off and did that thing that authors always say, did their own thing. And I was like, surely that's not true when authors say that. But it happened.
Do you think you would have written it if COVID hadn't happened?
Oh, do you know, no one's asked me that. I haven't thought about that.
So I was thinking of the good questions.
Yeah, you're good.
Without the luxury of the time and the peace and the not rushing about and all of that.
I don't know. I don't know.
Anyway, that's irrelevant because you did.
I have written my second book now.
Yes.
So I have managed to balance it with home and work. I have a job at Midas PR looking after authors and festivals. And so I have managed to find, and I think that's because now I want to do it. I love it. So I find the time. And I think it's easy. If you've got something you really want to do, you really love, you make the time. And because I think for the family, because the Garnett Girls is out there. They've seen that it's sold. It's a fact now. It's not something that mummy's doing hidden away. They know what it's about. That makes it easier.
But you must tell them about where you actually write now, because I'm so super jealous of this. I'm not even envious, jealous. So
we live full time in a houseboat near Hampton Court on an island called Tags Island. And someone's laughing. Do you know Tags Island? Hello Hamptonites, that's nice. And with my book money, the advance I got, it was actually my partner James's idea. He said, why don't you get a little canal boat? So I think it's called a Wilderness. It's a little tiny one, and it's moored on, the houseboat has a kind of terrace at the back, it's moored there. And I was saying to Amber that it's funny with the kids, because the kids are up, the main houseboat is kind of floating 2-story house. And the kids could come all the way down, go out the terrace, climb aboard Betsy, but they don't very often. They sometimes send me texts going, are you coming out now? Are you coming out, Betsy? And I'm like, yeah. No,
but how cool is that, though? That's very cool.
So I've got a view of the weir and the river, and I'll, occasionally someone in a canoe will bang into me, and I'll rock when someone goes past. But it really works as a place. And the new book that's going to be a while coming out is set on a houseboat island. So it really helped with the setting, because they're right on the Thames.
Well, they do say write what you know to start with, don't they? So,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Write about the places you love.
Well, yes, indeed. And have you sort of, from this experience that you've had now of being an author, have you had any sort of insights as to how you would now do things differently for other authors?
It's definitely made me more sympathetic. I don't think I was ever an unsympathetic publicist, but I think that putting yourself out there, going out to meet readers, I mean, there's nothing better than meeting readers. It's an amazing privilege. But it is, you are feeling all the time the pressure of the new books, how's your book doing? It's a competitive environment. Have I done enough? It's always that feeling of, have I done enough to let the book, fly into the world? So I'm very sympathetic now with my authors. There's some things I'm less sympathetic about, though. Like when an author says to me, oh, how am I going to get there? What will I... And I'm like, it's not that difficult. Get on the train, there'll be someone to meet. I think authors had to... COVID was useful in many ways, because authors had to kind of rely on themselves a lot. And places like the BBC couldn't say, well, we definitely need you in the studio, which is what they always say. And now, it's made a lot of the job a lot easier, because you can get online events. They're not the same, sadly, are they? I mean, I remember listening to millions in lockdown, but you can do interviews and stuff online. So a lot of authors do hide behind that.
Yes.
Because you don't want to leave their house. But yeah, some things I'm more sympathetic about. Some things I'm like, just get on with it.
Yes. I have a question, but that's not actually one of my own questions. This is a question from somebody I know.
Your book club?
Yes, from our book club. And
Ooh,
it said,
scary.
yes, I know. I got them to, because most of them had actually read the book.
Right,
so it was
good.
quite interesting to see what other people's questions were. So this was, when you decided to write the book, what were your drivers? Was it because you worked in the industry for so long and wondered how it would feel to be an author? Or has there always been a story inside you that you felt needed telling? Which I know you've sort of covered.
Yeah. I think what was really good about it being lockdown is there wasn't really a publishing industry at that time. It was in meltdown. People were furloughed, no one was working. We were about to publish Hamnet, which is undoubtedly Maggie's work of great genius. I had to cancel something like 38 festivals and events, and had to move her whole campaign on virtual. And she's the kind of author that had a 12-year-old laptop. And I remember her saying to me, she was about to go on Newsnight, online. She said, I think I might need to get a new laptop. I was like, yes, you do. But there was no one, and there was no one working. And poor authors who had books published at that time, if you weren't famous like Maggie O'Farrell, it was a shocker. There were books coming out when the bookshops were shut. It was a really hard time. And so I think one of the things that was good from my point of view was I wasn't trying to chase the market. I wasn't trying to think what genre is going to work. People call the Garnett Girls family saga. Someone said to me, do you mind that? I said, no, I love that. Some of the best books I've ever read are family saga, like the Shell Seekers by Rosamund Pilcher. What an amazing book. People nodding. I mean, that's a family saga. So I think I wrote the book I wanted to read. I didn't think, is this going to be, is it going to fit the market? Because there was no market.
It's interesting you say family saga, because a lot of people call Joanna Trollope's books Argus sagas.
Argus sagas,
and you're not allowed to say it when you speak to her. She has got an absolute anathema about it, which is quite interesting. I think she feels that it's sort of pigeonholed her in some way.
Well, it's because it's posh.
Yes.
Only posh people have Argus, so she doesn't want to think part of her audience not to buy her books. I can understand that, but she's a genius. I mean, she's brilliant. Someone said, "Oh, maybe you'll be the new Joanna Trollope." I was like, "Yes, please, take that." Yes, please.
On that note, would you like to read us a little bit of the Garnett Girls? For those of you who haven't read it, we're not going to give you any spoilers. So we've had this discussion. So it might sound slightly disjointed, the conversation, but we don't want to give away the ending, which I reread this morning.
So this is the prologue of the book. And in case you think, oh God, how long is she going to read for? Sometimes you think, it's exactly 4 minutes. I know, because I've recorded it on audio. So it's 4 minutes, and it gives you a glimpse of the girls when they're children and some of the drama that's to come. Margot let the heavy door slam behind her, her hand lingering on the cold brass of the doorknob. She felt the heat envelop her, the air thick and still with it, no sea breeze to bring relief. There was even a heat haze over the sea blurring the horizon. Sasha's small, sticky hand slipped out of hers, and she was off, taking Sandcove's steep steps with hops and jumps. "Da!" she kept calling. She was chasing her father. She was always chasing her father. Margot watched as the white blonde curls shot along the sea wall above the beach, the curve of her cheek slathered in sun cream. Margot shouted, "Not near the edge," hearing the echoes of all the times growing up this had been shouted at her. "Immy, go with her. Make sure she's okay. Your father's too far away." Imogen obediently trailed down the steps, book in hand. She moved slowly, dreamily. Margot noticed how knotted her long hair was. There was a huge bird's nest at the back. People would think she wasn't coping if they saw it. Quicker than that, she's already at the walkway. Margot felt Rachel lurking beside her, 2 enormous picnic bags at her feet. Margot looked at her eldest daughter's face, which always seemed to be set in a scowl these days. She was wiser than she should be at 9, clever and sarcastic. She did not help the atmosphere in the house with her sharp observations. "What's wrong now? Didn't you see? Dad's left. He just didn't take anything for the picnic." Margot had seen Richard's pale legs disappearing over Horiston Point. He'd been holding something, most likely the cooler box. He would already be on the white sand of Priory, a glass in his hand, chatting to whoever was there. On a day like this, people would be coming into the bay by boat for barbecues and picnics. He couldn't wait to get away from us. Margot wanted to go back alone into the cool and quiet of the house, but she couldn't leave Richard in charge. She would never be able to leave him in charge. She needed to say something reassuring to Rachel. "Don't be silly. He went ahead to get a good spot." Margot ignored the world-weary sigh beside her. She picked up the 2 bags. "You okay to take the rug, darling?" She looked out at the horseshoe of the bay. The light was dazzling. The tide had come right in, leaving only a crescent of beach. "Look, Rach, it's perfect for swimming." Later, on their striped rug, Richard handed her a glass of cold white wine. He was grinning, a ragged straw hat perched on his head, a blob of sun cream on the bridge of his nose. Margot reached up a finger to rub it in, and he seized her hand, kissed it. They both leant back on their arms, watching their girls play in the sea. Imogen was patiently leaping with a squealing Sasha in and out of the waves near the shore. Rachel was swimming along the bay, strong and sure. It'd be grand to have a stroke like that. Richard's voice was envious. He was a terrible swimmer. Margot had tried to teach him, but he was too proud and impatient. "I don't want her to get out of sight." "Oh, stop worrying so much and drink your wine." Margot looked up at the spindly trees leaning at an angle over the beach, sending long shadows at sunset. This beach could feel like it only belonged to her in winter. Today, they might as well have been in the Mediterranean with all the smart ribs and speedboats crowding the water, just a short swim away from the shore. There were bronzed bodies everywhere. One thing she didn't need to worry about was Richard looking at any other woman. He only ever had eyes for her. She watched as he leant over and sloppily tipped the last of the bottle into his glass. She knew better than to say anything. "I'm boiling. Shall we have a swim?" Mostly it was a happy day. It took hours for Richard to get drunk, and before he did, he played cricket with his daughters, threw Sasha high up in the air, made them all laugh with his terrible handstands in the sea. Then he slept it off in the shade of the trees. The beach had started to empty, while Margot was fully absorbed in building an enormous sand village with moats and shell houses. Rachel had pushed them all to be ambitious and was still there beside her, adding a turret. Imogen had sloped away to read her book. Sasha was burying her Dar's feet in the sand as he slept. When Margot looked up, the sky was streaked with vivid pink, the tide was far out, and half the sand was in shadow. "I want a photo of the three of you with this, come on." Obediently, Rachel and Imogen knelt beside Sasha, the sand village behind them. Margot noticed their new freckles, their beach hair, the patch of red on Sasha's dimpled thigh where she'd missed the sun cream. "Come on, girls, big smiles." Take my glasses off.
If that doesn't leave you wanting to read the rest of it, then I don't know what does. So, just moving without giving too much away and talking a little bit about the characters. Not about anybody you know, is it?
So, I have a story about that. I went to school with some Garnets. I also knew literary Garnets. I like the name because it has that lovely double meaning. And I was thinking of the Garnet ring and the stone. And it was done. I mean, they loved the title, the jacket. They come up with this beautiful image. I know it's my own book and I shouldn't say it, but it's just such a beautiful jacket. They did me proud with that. So that was all, and we were about to have proofs made. Proofs is when they do the early version that you send out to journalists, people like Amber. And I was at a party here on the island, and someone said to me, "Is it based on the Garnets of Seaview?" And I was like, "Oh no, It was one of those moments. So I have since discovered that there are Garnets, very very old, long-term family in Seaview, but I didn't know about them. But what's interesting is people really feel. Someone was telling me last night at the Squadron that they felt that how could I not know, because it was almost like their childhood that I was describing. So that's been interesting. I think it's really helped sell the book on the island, so I'm all for it.
A little bit of Seaview gossip.
Yeah, someone said to me at my event, "Oh, you're the talk of the Seaview WhatsApp." And I was great. Fantastic.
Excellent. Well, there's a garland for you.
Yeah.
So just thinking about the characters, I mean, do you see yourself in any of them particularly, or are they drawn from people that you know, or are certain aspects drawn from people that you know?
My publisher did a marketing quiz, find out which Garnet girl you are. And we were talking about it with my editor and agent, and they'd got various people. My agent had got Rachel, who's, I suppose, the sensible older one. There's Imogen, who's the dreamy one, who's kind of wanting to please her mother all the time. And there's Sasha, who's probably the wild one, who's really running away. And then you've got Margot, who's the mother. And Margot is what some might call a piece of work. She's about to turn 60. She is very much the main character. She loves being the main character. She's quite controlling of her girls, but everything she does really is out of too much love, not too little. And some people love Margot, they totally get her. Other people never go on Goodreads, never read your reviews on Goodreads. You think I'd know that, but I did anyway. And someone said, if Margot was my mother, I'd shoot her. So that's how some people feel about Margot. So to answer your question, I got Margot in this quiz. And I was like, well, surely this is wrong. This quiz doesn't work. And they were all going, yes, it does. I think that my good friends see maybe a little bit of me in all of them. I think that I started with a touchstone of myself at different stages in my life as a jumping off point. But then that magic thing that I used to sit like you are now listening to Patrick or whoever, and they talk about characters coming on to life and going off and doing their own thing. And I think to myself, is that just something writers say? Because it seems hard to believe when you're not actually doing it. But yeah, they each have a touchstone, and then they went from there. And for me, they're very much alive. They're out there on the Dover, living their lives. And who knows, maybe one day I'll go back to them.
But it's written in such a descriptive way. So the way that you describe Christmas, for instance, when, you know,
I love
and
Christmas.
we won't do a spoiler on that one because that's quite an interesting bit sort of towards the end. But it's so descriptive and it's so family traditional. I mean, are those things that you did with your family, or where did those sorts of descriptive pieces come from?
I think that is quite a family. But basically, Margot loves Christmas, and all the daughters are trying to do Christmas the way she likes it. So there are these traditions. There's, you know, Birth Bourguignon on Boxing Day. There's a certain kind of champagne. There's always a party in the run-up. There's stuff, and there are these traditions that have been passed down. But I really wanted to explore that idea of sometimes those traditions and rituals that a family have are reassuring and amazing and lovely, and sometimes they're a burden on the generations. And just like inheritances, so Margot has given the Sand Cove, the beautiful house, slightly crumbling, needs some money spent on it, to her oldest daughter, Rachel, because she thinks Rachel will love the life of the beach and the horse riding and walks, and the children will have a lovely outdoor life. But Rachel's living a life she doesn't really want. She really would rather be in London being a lawyer. And Margot keeps turning up at the house as if it's still her house, and having parties there and hosting, and she's moved up the road to a cottage called The Other Place. I was having a little joke there. I was enjoying that joke. But yeah, so I think that I wanted to show with those kind of family things that at times they're lovely and comforting, but at other times, if you're a daughter, they can be restrictive and a burden. And the whole of the Garnett Girls does play on that idea of how, you know, your relationships, how each of the girls has such a different relationship with Margot, with their mother. But they're stuck in these roles. You know how in families we all get assigned a role. So you might be the pretty one or the clever one or the sensible one. I was always the really kind of the party girl that would end up losing something or breaking things. And even at my 50th birthday party, my mother rang me up before and she said, "Well, we've got you a lovely present, but we're not going to bring it." I hired the Pink House on Bembridge Beach for my 50th, and had a very Garnett Girls style house weekend. It was fantastic with kids and paddleboarding, and it was really fun. And she said, we're not going to bring it, you know, because you know what you're like. And I was like, it's my 50th birthday party. She's like, something will happen to it. You'll lose it or break it. And I think there was something that happened maybe when I was 21, and I've been, you know.
I actually have a theory about this because my mother is exactly the same. And she says things to me like, "Well, there's no point offering you breakfast, you don't eat breakfast." Or there's no point asking you if you want to go for a walk, you don't walk anywhere. And what she's done is she's encapsulated all of us as the age that we left home. Yeah. So I left home to go to college at 17. And in my head, I am still that 17-year-old who doesn't eat breakfast and won't walk anywhere. Yeah. And, you know, so it is quite a thing, as you say. And I think Margot is a little bit, so I've told Georgina I don't like Margot.
She doesn't like Margot.
We've had this conversation already.
We've fallen out about it, but we've made it
already. Because I like Margot's sister Alice, because I like the quiet ones.
You like the quiet ones that hold the family together. Margot has this sister who's very much sees herself, and I think the family sees her as the lesser sister in a way, the kind of the slightly less vibrant one, but actually a lot of people have written to me about Alice because they feel that she really is the one that holds everything together. You know, in that way that often happens. Often the least noisy people are the ones doing all the work.
But the girls are quite scathing about her because they say, "Oh, Alice always burns everything," or "Alice can't, you know, Alice is incapable," and they're quite Margot-ish in their criticism of her as well. And you're kind of thinking, well, actually, she's really there for you girls, and you don't.
Well, there's a scene, isn't there, towards the end, without any spoilers, where Margot finally gives Alice her due.
Yes.
And I really wanted to show that. And they end up, making, you know, I think Margot always knows that she can't. In the early days, even when, you know, she's having her romance as a teenager, Alice is really the one that's there for her. So I think she knows. And the thing with Margot is you do see, in case you're making her out to be a monster, but you do see the vulnerabilities behind it. You do see a woman who is trying to hold on to the reins of her life. And basically, I had another name for the book. I was going to call it The Ordinary Husbands, because this is very much the female's story. It's in the minds of the women. You're not in the minds of the men. The men play a really important role, but you're in the minds of the women. And the idea behind that was that Margot had this kind of huge epic love with Richard, the father who leaves the family, and that's what really the starting point. They're left when they're very little, and she doesn't want the girls to. She wants the girls to find nice, kind, safe men who will look after them and be there when after their work and look after the family, because she does want them to make the choice she made, which was the sexy poet who was unreliable and an alcoholic. So, but of course, girls, you don't want to follow the romantic advice of your mother. No one ever does. So there's that push-pull.
Well, because this book is not just about the mother-daughter relationship, it's also about the complexities of marriage as well. And each of the daughters have their own complex relationships with the people that they're with. I mean, you've got Rachel, who's with Gabriel, the psychoanalyst. You've got Sasha, who is sort of with the awful, controlling Phil. Who
everyone hates Phil.
Well, why would you not
People
hate
write
Phil?
to me about Phil.
He's
I
horrible.
didn't realise he was such a monster. I suppose.
Well, but without whatever. But that's a sign of a character well written.
Yeah,
because
I hope so. Thank you.
Absolutely, because you really, really dislike him, and you get. I got quite cross about him actually, and sort of thought, well,
Because he is very controlling.
he is very controlling.
I think women do often go through a stage, or have a partner. It might be a boyfriend when they're a teenager who says things. You're not wearing that, are you? It could just be something as casual as that. It happens all the time. I have friends, and mostly we work it out.
Yes.
And Sasha does work it out.
She does. Thank
But
you. I was quite relieved about that. Actually.
Yes.
I worried about
I know. I love
as
Sasha.
I was flicking through.
But I am in the enviable position of living and sharing my life with the psychotherapist, James, who's in the audience, which is really, really helpful if you're writing a book about complex characters. And James definitely sat down with me, and when on the first draft, we definitely looked at this idea that all three girls have gone through the same trauma of losing their father, but how it's impacted them all in such different ways. And I find that fascinating, because why is it that some people are more resilient in other ways? Why is it that Sasha, who hardly knew her father, thinks she was 2 or something, she's the one really who thinks her whole life would be changed. It would be so much better if she had a father. They all have reacted differently, and James and I sat down and really drew that out. So I hope that shows, and you don't, when you write a debut novel, you really don't know what you're doing.
No.
Let's be honest. I mean, so, and I really, when it went to my agent, I knew that they would want to get it out quite quickly because it was me, and they think, and they liked it, but I just said, can we really work on it? And they had, at Curtis Brown, they had an in-house editor who I was so lucky. I mean, she works with Marion Keyes and amazing authors. I was lucky enough to work with her. So that when it went out, I'd done as much as I can. And actually, I think everyone was really surprised, because I'm not very good at being told what to do. So I got
Why does this not surprise me?
as quickly as possible in publishing, I got to be the boss, because that was better than being told what to do. But I absolutely love being edited.
Really? Well,
Yeah.
that's quite surprising, actually.
It's so interesting. And most of it I agreed with. I mean, those books that you sometimes buy and you get halfway through and you think, this should have been edited. That's because the author hasn't listened to their editor. And I just love some of the things, draw this out the character. You're having those eyes on it. It's exciting. And if you can work on something to make it better. So I was surprised, but I think everyone was surprised by that. Oh, she's taken to this rather well, thankfully.
Well, we were having a chat earlier on about kids and reading and all of those sorts of things. Because I was saying to Georgina that apparently no songs that are released at the moment have an intro, because nobody has got time to listen to an intro to a song, which is shocking. And the lyrics come in straight away. And we were talking about children and reading, and the fact that, when we reread some of our old childhood books, that you were talking about Tom's Midnight Garden, you're kind of getting into it going, God, we're on chapter 8 and nothing's happened, So it's quite interesting how times have moved on from that perspective as well.
They made me cut a lot. She thought there was way too many pub scenes with local characters and chat about boat building and stuff. She was like, that was all got to go. I was like, oh, I like that bit. So that was useful. And the thing that I really, really I think that quite quickly got the characters and the setting. People have been nice enough to say that the sense of place is really strong. But I didn't realise this, but she said, well, we're going to have to work on your dialogue. And I was like, oh. And she said, you're like many women who've read too many 19th century novels and thinks that dialogue is like that. She was brilliant, because when you go to events, you don't often hear about the mechanics of writing dialogue. It's not often talked about. And she was great. She was like, basically they each got to have their own rhythm, like music. And it's not like, don't do it like speech really is, because no one will make head or tail of it. But also strip out all the grammar and stop doing proper sentences, have people interrupting. And, after we'd done it a while, then it came to me. But it's not easy.
No.
I mean, you were talking about a book you were reading that had too much dialogue.
Well, I'm actually proofreading a book for somebody at the moment, and it's all dialogue, and it's really, really not very well written. The dialogue. And it's quite interesting, because unlike Georgina, the chap that's written it, who's very nice, it's all written in the first person, which makes it
really
quite hard to read as well. But he doesn't really want me to change any of it. That's
what I was talking about.
Yes.
That's the thing.
And he's put a lot of slang into it as well, which just grates so badly. And yeah, it's very difficult. And I'm trying to be quite circumspect with him and saying to him, in the nicest possible way, actually, that's not. And he's going, oh, but I really like that bit. Can we leave that in? And I'm going, yeah, all right, it's your book, So.
I had one of those moments where the editor said to me, you've got too many people with the name R. And I was like, oh, it'll be confusing for the reader, so you need to change one of them.
That's interesting.
Oh, no, what? Who's got... So I thought about it, and I thought about how I could be get really upset and think it's going to change everything. And then I just did that, find and replace, and just did it on my manuscript. You can go find a word, replace it with this name. Yep. Just did it. And I just thought, it's like pulling off a plaster. I just thought, because otherwise if I think about it too much, it's going to... So there are things like that happen that you've just got to try not to be too sentimental about.
Yeah, but it's difficult, because when
it's
you
really
put your
hard.
heart and soul into something
really
like this
hard,
chap has,
It's really, really hard.
Yeah, it's difficult to sort of be critical.
I know.
And self-critical as well.
Self-critical, yeah.
So it's not easy. So with all the characters that you have, I know you had your quiz and you are in fact Margot. I think I'm Rachel actually, but there you go. And
I think you're a bit Rachel.
I think I'm a bit Rachel. Do you sort of see yourself in any of the characters, or did you write any of them with bits of yourself in mind? I'm thinking maybe party girl Sasha.
Sasha is a rebellious teen, and Margot's a rebellious teen, and I was a bit of a rebellious. I went off with a man that my parents really didn't want me to be with, and sort of black bin bags at the door kind of situation, no one talking to each other, and it was all actually quite. When I look back, it was actually really heartbreaking to have that period of not talking to my parents. Because we fell out over, and I was in love, and I was going to follow my love, and so that is there, definitely. That's there, because I think a lot of people have really identified with that. Lots of people have come to me and said, oh, I had this relationship when I was 17, and I really wanted to be with him. My parents didn't. I think a lot of people have been through that. That age where you feel that you know it all, and you're right, and everyone else is wrong. And I see now that I was an absolute nightmare. And I'm very lucky to have a very, very willful, clever and opinionated daughter. And I now feel very sympathetic to my mother, which I think is that loop, isn't it? That you go, everyone's nodding, you go round it and you suddenly think, God, this is hard.
I know. I laugh with my daughter now because her 15-year-old daughter is a complete nightmare, exactly as she was. And I think, oh, history repeating itself, how lovely.
Yeah, it's nothing you don't deserve.
No,
basically.
well, yeah, but it is difficult, but it's funny how life sort of just repeats itself almost,
I think that's right. So that's Sasha, and then Rachel, I think, is very much that problem that a lot of modern women face, is the having it all, trying to have it all, trying to have the career and the children and still be there for your partner. And so, I think that was what I was really wanting to explore in Rachel. And sometimes putting your needs down the list,
which she very much does. Yes.
Which is what Rachel does. And Imogen Imogen's the one that most people have identified with. Imogen is, I think, very much a writer, an artist. She has that slight ability to, she's sort of lost the focus. She doesn't she's drifting. And again, I think that we all often go through a period in our life where we haven't got a plan. Where's the plan? And you just don't know what's going, and you're sort of letting people direct you, and you're not taking charge. And that's Imogen at this point in this book. So I could identify with that. I've had periods in my life where I've been like that, where you're just like, or very much that stage in your 30s. All the girls are in their 30s. Margot's about to turn 60. I think 30s for women as well is such a hard time. You know, lots of writers write about the 20s. Coming of age or younger than that. But the thing about the 30s, if you're a woman, you've got a lot of pressure on you. People are saying to you, is this the person you're going to be with forever? Are you going to marry this person? Are you going to have a baby? You need to get on. Clock's ticking. What's happening with your career? If you go on maternity leave, is your career going to be all right? Do you want to have a career and be a mum? All these issues it all suddenly comes down on you in your 30s, and you're like, oh, I was having such a nice time. So that's very much fueling that. And with Margot, I read books about women, and they don't represent the women I know, women who are older. They're all kind of, you know, women are often in commercial fiction. If they're a certain age, they're often assigned to a corner, you know, knitting or being a grandmother, or they don't represent any of the, you know, 40, 50, 60-year-old women I know who are still very much in the game, very much main characters. So Margot that was something I did set out to try to do, and people have really responded to it. That, you know, I wanted to show people later, and she's having sex. You haven't brought that up. Throw the sex out there. They'll sell some
I
books.
felt we were in a church, you know, so maybe that wasn't. But I was actually going to say to you, I quite fancy being Margot in later life, but I'm not sure my husband would approve.
No, you can't do Margot and have a husband.
No,
that's not going to work. That's not going to work.
To see about that.
Yeah, but she's a vibrant. Yes, she's vibrantly living her life.
Yes,
and I think that was important to me, because I just sometimes feel that I don't see women.
But interestingly, it's not an uncomfortable part of the book. Some books, when you read them, if you read a character like Margot, which again is down to the way you've written her, is that, you know, I kind of admired her. I didn't like her because of the thing that we're not talking about that she did, because that would spoil her. But I liked her for the fact that she'd sort of moved on with her life at that age, and she was having a lot of fun, you know, as you say, rather than sitting in a corner knitting or being, you know, whatever. Not there's anything wrong with knitting.
She doesn't like self-pity. She's not. No. She's kind of.
Yeah.
Someone would call her. Someo's flashing at us. If we're talking.
No, that's all right. Don't worry.
She's. I think someone said she's a game gal.
She is a game girl. That's exactly how you would describe her.
Yeah.
And yes, she's a very interesting but very complex character.
I find people's responses to her really fascinating, and I think I've made peace. I said to James, "Oh God, you know, I've got some people who absolutely love this book, and these Sunday Times, great reviews, and then there are other people who just, you know, don't get Margot." And James was really helpful, because he was saying, if you're going to have that, you're going to have that.
Of course, because and a book is purely subjective.
Yeah. So now I'm kind of I've made my peace with that not everyone's going to get the characters or love them.
No.
But in a way, I wasn't setting out to write easy characters. So, yeah, but it is hard, you know, it's because it's your baby. And then, you know, it's hard at first, but I've developed a thicker skin now.
Good. Well, on that note, do we have any questions from our lovely audience?
Hello,
We've
lovely
been sitting
audience.
wrapped.
Are they wrapped?
Well.
Oh, you must have some questions, though. Yes.
One sec.
You've got a microphone.
Speak into it. Oh, hello.
Oh, very good voice.
I can't remember what I was going to... yes, I know what I was going to say. I only grew up with a brother, so had no sisters. I just wondered whether you grew up with several sisters. I presume that you must have done, because that would have helped
I'm the oldest, which would surprise no one. I'm the oldest of three. But I have a sister, Chloe, and a brother, Thomas. So there were three of us. But yes, I really want to, it's really calling to me, I really want to write. We have a girl and a boy who are Sunny and Daisy, very close in age. There's only 12 months. And they're really, really close. And I really, at some stage, really want to write that relationship between a brother and a sister, because I think it's got, just like sisterhood has, I think it's got its own uniqueness. My son is very protective of our daughter, and their dynamic is amazing because they don't really remember a time when they didn't have each other. So it's that twin-like. Well, they were dangerously close to being Irish twins. Yeah. So I'd love to explore that sister-brother, because I think it's got its own story to tell, hasn't it? Maybe I will at some point. Yes, I think that's right. That Chloe and I had that thing where, you know, we felt we were pigeonholed. She thought they had all the academic expectations on me, which wasn't fair on her. So we've had that, and we're incredibly close now. I think if something was going wrong in my life, she'd probably be the first person I'd ring. It's that feeling of, I try to talk about it quite a lot of mine, but it's saying that sisterhood is different from female friends, because you can have that with your sister. Many people do have their female friendship, but it's more than that, because you're carrying the weight of your family's history together and the weight of those relationships. So I really wanted to get to the heart of that with the sisters, and also that feeling that even when you're really annoyed with them, you're drawn back to them, because in this book, really the only other two people that know, apart from Sasha, are themselves. They're the only ones that went through that. So they're really, and as soon as they start opening up and realising that if they talk about it as a three, and they unite, not unite against Margot, but unite to explain to Margot what they need, then they become really strong. And that's the journey they go on, without giving too much away.
And I'm wondering whether they picked which sister they are most like.
Yeah.
But, yes.
Quite a lot of people have bought it for their sister. And then someone was buying it yesterday for their mother-in-law, and I thought, oh, that could go wrong.
I don't think I'll be sending it to my mother.
No.
I think that would be a great idea.
Well, apparently someone's mother said, do you think I'm like this?
Well, no, that's exactly what she would do. That's exactly what she would say, and that would be it. I'd be cut out of the will, and that would be gone.
No. Yes. Yeah, it's really funny.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
You clearly upset your parents by rushing off with a very exciting man, or at least at that time very exciting. When did the Pauline conversion come about? How did it come about that you finally found somebody you could settle down with? And
that was a long old journey. That was, when I finally settled down, my parents were very pleased that I met lovely James Ducan, who's in the audience, but I was about 37. So it was a long wait. And to be honest, I think really they'd given up on me. I think everyone thought I was the career girl that was in and out of parties, and I was having some big dramas. And do you know what? I'm really pleased I had that, because there is a wealth of material there really is, which is, you know, I didn't realise at the time, but now I look back and think that was helpful. But yes, I think they sort of say, well, this is Georgina, and she's the director in publishing, and I think they'd almost kind of made their peace with it. And then I came along and had 2 babies quite quickly, all in a rush, you know. And so, yeah, so they're I think they're quite proud now, but they're the kind of parents that they don't like to tell. They're the kind of parents you hear them maybe at a party go, oh, have you heard Georgina's got a book? Yeah. But they don't say it to your face. But I think they're pleased that I'm settled. But it was a long old journey that would take a lot longer than we've got to talk about. Anyone else? Or are we going to go to the bookshop?
No, nobody. Well, thank you.
I really enjoyed that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Which was a really interesting insight. If you haven't bought it, please do, because it is a really, really good story. It's a really good read, and it's all the bits we haven't told you, and there's an awful lot we haven't told you in actual fact, is amazing. And I'm going to her house for Christmas this year. She doesn't know that yet, but I am. I want a Margot Christmas, please.
You want a Negroni, don't you?
Well, it's my birthday on the 22nd. So I want the 22nd. Yeah. So let's see. I might hit you up for that.
Thank you for being such a nice audience.